Hi folks, this is Donald. Welcome back to Venice, and this week I'm going to be trying to draw the famous Rialto Bridge that crosses the main canal in the city. And this is a complex scene that I wanted to try in the high contrasty black and white style that I started trying last week in the coffee shop scene that I did in Seattle. I was quite intrigued to see if that same style of high contrast black and white sketching will translate into an urban scene, so that's what I'm having a go with today. And spoiler alert, I wasn't entirely sure about the end result, so I would love to hear your feedback once we get to the end of the video about whether you thought this worked or not. In terms of the drawing, as always, I start with the items nearest to me and work my way backwards into the scene so that nothing is crossing over each other. And I should also mention that you may have noticed I am wearing a rather unusual looking glove. This is a drawing glove, a very odd looking two-fingered glove that, as the name suggests, is used specifically for drawing. I came across this and I thought it was a great idea that would potentially solve a problem for me, because what I've found has been happening lately is that I have been getting ink on the side of my hand, and then I've been pressing down on the page and I'm getting black splodges of ink all over the place. You could also use a piece of paper, but I prefer to have the freedom to draw without having half the page obscured by a sheet of paper underneath your hand. So this little glove I thought might do the trick, and you can also use this when you're using tablets or iPads if you're wanting to draw on them. So that's what they're essentially designed for, but you can also use it on paper for purposes like this. In terms of the drawing, once I'd got the foreground poles and the little rickety walkways, it was time to start drawing the bridge itself. And the arc was probably the most important part of the whole sketch. I had already roughly drawn it in pencil, but I stared at the page so long thinking, I have to get this line right, or the whole thing is just not going to work. It's not going to look right at all. And when you're drawing with ink, you only get one chance at it. So I went for it. It worked fine. I just had to make sure that the left-hand side of the arc was slightly steeper than the right side, just because of perspective. Once I got that line roughly correct, then I could get the arch underneath, and with all that in place, I was fairly confident that I would be able to complete the sketch and it would look reasonably like the scene. There's always a critical moment in a sketch that is usually the hardest part to draw, and once I get over that stage, I'm usually reasonably confident that I'll be able to finish it. This is one of those drawings where you can get lots and lots of detail, and that's what I always love, is drawing the detail. So all the little boxes, I don't know what you would call them, I'm calling them boxes, that run across the bridge, and all the ornate elements that were on the bridge, and the concrete railing that went over the top. All these bits, once you pack in the detail, that's what brings it to life for me. That's probably the biggest thing I enjoy about sketching, is finding all those little details and spending the time to draw them all in. I feel that's the sort of thing that makes it worth the while spending the extra time to do that, because the amount of detail you get in is what makes a sketch interesting to look at and enjoyable to draw. That's my favourite part of all of this, probably. And you can see from the arch how wobbly the lines are, especially on the right hand side, but I do find that that's what gives the sketch's character, is those lines that are not perfect. That's hand drawing compared to drawing on a computerised device where you can get a perfect arch. Natural hand drawing brings out that wobbliness, and I don't know how artists at the highest level manage to draw such perfect scenes that don't feature all of that. Even if I practice for the rest of my life, I don't think I will ever be able to draw lines that are not wobbly. But then the question is, would I want to? I don't think I would. The weakest area of the whole sketch for me was the roofline down the right hand side. It looks more like an extended loaf of bread than the roofline. The mistake I made was that I should have just done it as a long tube and then arched lines rather than trying to do it bumpy all the way along, and it didn't quite look right, and then I made it even worse later on by trying to colour it in with black. It just stood out even more. But that's totally fine. I do go into sketches with the attitude that I'm almost accepting that at some point I'm going to draw something wrong, and I'm just trying to roll with it. And I think for a while I did get out of the habit of that. I was overthinking it too much and maybe getting a little bit frustrated. And I wasn't even listening to my own advice because, you know, I've said in the past so many times, don't get frustrated with mistakes. And then, of course, I go and do that myself. And it's something that I lost track of a little bit, but I'm back on track now. I don't get frustrated again. I'm just kind of going with it. And possibly one of the reasons for that is that I'm finding that overall the standard of my sketches has improved a great deal, and maybe I'm okay with it not being utterly perfect because I can see other areas that I've really improved. And that's such a big benefit when you feel like you're getting better. It does help keep the motivation going. And oddly, you'd think the better that you're drawing, the more frustrated you be with mistakes, because that's what ruins a otherwise perfectly good sketch. But for me, I'm trying to think of it as I can see all the bits that are getting better. And so the next time I draw this or something similar, then I will not make those mistakes. I'll probably make different mistakes, but it's not important because I can see the progress and I'm enjoying doing it anyway, which is always the spirit that I've tried to approach my sketching. Even though you get little wobbles, it's only natural. You get frustrated, you don't feel like it's going as well as it should. But I hope what I'm showing here is that you don't need to be naturally gifted at drawing to be able to take on scenes like this. Probably even a few weeks ago, I wouldn't have tried to draw this because the construction of it seems like it would be too difficult. But the big change is that I'm spending an awful lot longer on the drawings than I ever have before. I think this was about 4.5 hours. The sketch that I did in last week's video was 5 hours. I'm spending an awful lot longer than I used to, and that's, I think, made the biggest difference to my drawing. So if you've got the time to sit for several hours and do that, then that makes all the difference, I find. But everyone's different. Some people like to draw really quickly and get it over with in 20 minutes or so. And it's the speed that gives them the enjoyment of trying to capture the movement of a scene. And that's something I kind of regret that I can't do. I can't really capture the energy of a place because I have to draw everything in solid lines. It's just the way I have to draw. I've tried the other way, and I've even done videos of it in the past of trying to draw really quickly. You know, there was the video I did, which was in fact of Venice, when I set myself a 15-minute timer and tried to see how much I could get drawn in 15 minutes, and it was a very scribbly, scratchy way of doing things. But in general, I just feel that I have to draw like this. It has to be the solid lines and trying to pack in as much as I can into the scene. That's just what I love to do, just because I find it so relaxing and enjoyable to spend the time doing that. This is also a little bit of a celebratory sketch for me because this is now 1 year that I've been on YouTube making videos about sketching. This video marks my 1 year anniversary. It's been great fun, an awful lot of hard work, and it's been wonderful to meet all you lovely people who have dropped in to say hello and have watched my videos over the last year. So thank you so much for being here. And I especially want to give another big thank you to those of you who are supporting the channel over on my Buy Me a Coffee page. Your support is hugely appreciated and really is making a massive difference. So thank you so much to Cheryl, Amy, Anna, Kate, Jack, John, Tim, Monica, Debjani, Sue, Patty, and a couple of anonymous people. All of you have contributed and supported the channel, and it is massively appreciated. I suspect this channel will always be quite niche and is never going to have a mass audience, so getting support from a small group of people is a huge encouragement and helps me to keep going, so thank you very much indeed. On a related note, I should also mention that on the Buy Me a Coffee page I have posted a behind the scenes tour of Urban Sketchy headquarters, i.e. my living room. And I took supporters through my entire process of making these videos, so if you're already a supporter or would like to be, then you can check out all that sort of fun stuff over there. I was really quite pleased how this was looking as a line drawing, and I was quite tempted to leave it as an ink drawing. But at the same time, the reason I chose this specific scene was that I wanted to play with high contrast black and see if I could go really dark with the shadows under the arch. So I thought I'm going to commit to that. If it goes wrong, then I can always draw the scene again another time, and it would just be part of my sketching development to see whether high contrast black and white sketches using pure black is the way forward, or whether I need to go back to the greys. So I just dived in with the colouring in. As always, I go about turning all the lights off with the pure black ink in the Faber-Castell Pitt brush pen, and specifically at the request of one of our regular commenters, Monica, I have brought back the yellow. I've turned on one of the lights with the yellow Pitt brush pen. That was something I used to do, but I hadn't done it for a little while, and under Monica's mildly threatening demands, I have brought it back. So there you go, Monica, I hope you're happy now. My aim with the rest of the scene was to use the black for anywhere where there would be a shadow, or anywhere that would need to make an object more three-dimensional, and then I also put some things into silhouette, like the little man in the gondola, and I even gave him a little cap. The arch was the biggest risk of this way of colouring in because it's so black and it totally dominates the scene. And I was switching between the big brush black pen and the smaller brush, and they're both exactly the same ink inside. It does definitely give you that really strong contrast in the shadows, and I do like it, but I did wonder if it was just a bit too dominant. It was overtaking the scene. All your eye can look at is that big mass of black. The Rialto Bridge is somewhere that I've seen artists and sketchers drawing a lot. It's quite an iconic place for artists to draw. And when I was reading about it, I discovered that it was first built in 1173, and then it's been knocked down and rebuilt several times. It seems an enormous amount of effort. And the current version that we're looking at was built in 1588, and it took 3 years to build, crossing over the Grand Canal that goes through the city. It's a total tourist haven, as is the whole place of Venice, but everyone seems to flock to this bridge. And I can only imagine if you were trying to draw this on location, how many people you'd have crowding around you, wanting to see what you were doing. And then the roof line on the right hand side, I tried to fix that with black, it just made it even worse. So if I was drawing this scene again, I would definitely draw that right hand side of the roof line in a different way. It was probably the only part of the sketch that I felt didn't really work that well in terms of the drawing. I then moved on to the white gel pen, and I found that the initial lines were quite scratchy, as I do often find is the case with white gel pens. The lines in the top half of the arch I found a bit better, and that's because I started drawing the lines slower, and I found that the ink flow was much nicer once I started drawing slower. Whether I like that look, I'm not sure. I think it's fine. It looks okay. Like from a distance, I think it looks fine. Once you start looking at it really close up, I just am not totally sure if it's the right way to go. I feel like the darkest greys that I use would have the same effect, but then you wouldn't need the white because you'd still see the line work that you've already done underneath. So I don't know, I'd love to hear what you think about this. That high contrast black and white style I thought worked really well in the coffee shop scene I did last week, so maybe it's scene dependent. The problem is you don't know until you've coloured it in whether it's right for that scene, so that makes it tricky. Certainly I found that the coffee shop scene did work with the black, but maybe here it's a bit over the top, it's a bit too dominant. I think I want to try some more street sketches using the black and see what they're like, and then maybe I can compare a few before I decide what direction I want to go in next. I still feel like there's an argument for just leaving it as an ink drawing, because I often find nowadays that I'm quite liking the way the ink drawings are looking before I do any colouring in at all. So that's another option. And we all go through this. We have to try and figure this out and find the way that works for us. And we've all got different styles and we're all looking for different things. But I find the exploration and the successes and failures are all part of the experience, and one of the ways in which I think it makes it so fun. So lots to ponder, parts of this sketch that I like. I'm not sure about the colouring in, it's something I'll have to keep practicing with and seeing if I can find the right balance and whether scenes like this need to be toned down a bit as I continue to evolve my sketches. So thanks so much for watching, I hope you've enjoyed this, and on to year 2 of sketchy videos. See you in the next one.